on VA's first ever IT Coding Bootcamp. I want to start off by saying thank you for all of you who have served our country as we go into Veterans Day. Also, happy birthday to the Marine Corps today. Welcome to the IT Coding Bootcamp. My name is Matt Webb. I'll be your MC throughout the call, and I'm a Marine Corps veteran myself. Before we start today's webinar, I would like to go over how the call will run today. The webinar will last approximately 2 hours, and your phone lines will be muted during the speaker presentations. The presentation from today's call and other helpful resources are going to be available for download in the file box to the right of the presentation screen. We're going to take questions, Q&A at the end of the call. Please submit your question through the webinar chat feature. If we are unable to respond to your question during the call, please email us, and that email address is itbootcamp@va.gov, and our experts on the call today will get back to you with a detailed response. If you have complex questions or experience any technical issues, please also email that inbox. We're monitoring it currently, and we'll assist you. With that being said, I would now like to introduce the Assistant Secretary for Information and Technology and Chief Information Officer, the Honorable Ms. Laverne Council. Ma'am?
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. Welcome and happy early Veterans Day. I'm so proud to be with you, this wonderful group of veterans, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you. Thank you for all of your service and everything you do and everything you have done for this great country. But I'm really pleased that we can offer the first IT Coding Bootcamp. It is in honor of Veterans Day that we offer this, and it's a great way of OI&T sharing our knowledge with you to help you move your careers forward beyond the service that you've already made to this country. I would like to thank the developers on my team for volunteering to share their skills on today's session. See, what you have to realize, most IT people are introverts, so the fact that they're coming out to spend some time with you is a big deal. But we have Carlton Doc Dodd, Stephen Bars, Robert Ruff, Peter Kuzmak, and Angela Gonser. And I want to thank them all in advance for the great job they're going to do. And I know you're going to find what they offer you the best information that you'll ever receive as a new programmer. These individuals are some of our best, and we are so proud that they are here. So don't hesitate to ask them lots of questions. Please make this worth your time. We want to make sure that it's valuable and that you get exactly what you need out of this effort. And by the way, I'm one of those folks that believe in asking questions, and I find that sometimes people feel that they don't want to waste people's time, or they're embarrassed to ask the question, or they think it's something they should know. Please, forget all that. We're all friends here. We're all here for one purpose: ask. Because if you don't, you won't know. And sometimes when you ask it, you help everyone. So please take an opportunity and do just that. I truly hope that this sparks a love of IT. I started my career as a programmer analyst, and it served me well. And so please reach out to us. I hope you have a wonderful and worthwhile position. And with our organization, I'm not trying to advertise, but we're always open to great developers. You're going to find that we're going to open 3 development centers in the country. And so we're looking to have some of our veteran brides involved with that. So come join us. We love it when we help our veterans, serve our veterans, and support our veterans. And guess what? Most of the people in this organization are veterans. So with that, I'll give it back to Matt, and I wish you a great early Veterans Day again, and enjoy the boot camp. Matt?
Ms. Council, thank you so much for kicking off our first IT Coding Bootcamp. We're excited to get started. So with that being said, I want to now hand our first presentation off to Carlton Doc Dodd. He's a software developer at VA, and he's going to tell us a little more about software creation and his career path into developing. Before we have Doc online to give us our presentation, could you please make sure your phones are on mute for those who are dialed in? Thank you. Doc, would you like to kick us off with your presentation?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. First, hello to all my fellow veterans, and thank you for your service. Whether you served for a few years or a whole career, you've done more than 98% of the citizens of this great country. My name's Carlton Dodd. Most people call me Doc. I was a combat medic for a long time, and the nickname kind of stuck. Slide, please. First, let's talk about programming in general. To me, programming is like building with an unlimited supply of Legos. You have any part you need to build your creation. Plus, you get to make your own custom pieces. There are a huge number of programming languages. Some are general purpose, and some are for specific situations or specific computer hardware. However, they're all just that, languages. And like spoken languages, you just have to learn the right words and grammar to say what you want to do. Excuse me. Let's take the classic Hello World program that is the universal starting point for learning a programming language. It usually just prints Hello World to the screen, but let's change that to Thank you for serving. Next slide, please. Here it is in C# on the top, which is used in Windows desktop applications and for some websites. This is the language I use most often in my daily job. The other example is written in Java, which is used in a lot of websites and mobile applications. Don't worry about understanding the code, just notice there are a lot of things that these things have in common. Next slide, please. Here's the same thing in Objective-C on the top, which is used for iPhone applications, and in Node.js, which is fairly new and popular for websites and the Internet of Things applications. All of these produce the same result, using different languages. It's like learning to say, hello, my name is Carlton, how are you, in high school Spanish class. Next slide, please. All these languages print, thank you for serving, to the screen. Learning these programming languages is just learning bits at a time, just like high school Spanish. You can do this. Next slide, please. No matter which language you're using, the process is basically the same. Designing and building software to meet a VA need is much like how someone would decorate a home, or a decorator would decorate a home for someone. A decorator would ask the customer's basic tastes and desires. The programming team gathers an initial general description, we call them epics, and descriptions of how any specific function should work, which we call user stories. A decorator then refines the desires a bit, helping the customer picture the end product until the decorator thinks they know what the customer wants. The programming team breaks down those big epics into user stories that are small and specific enough to work on. The one at the bottom here is asking for certain veteran information to be displayed. A decorator shows the customer furniture and decorations for the most important room that the decorator thinks are just right. The programming team does a quick period of development, we call it a sprint, and they develop the highest priority user stories, the most important ones, and then demo the result to the customer. The decorator makes the changes on what the customer didn't like and comes up with modified furniture and decorations, whereas the programming team refines the user stories using the customer feedback from that demonstration and from the sprint. Next slide, please. A decorator repeats this cycle until the room is what the customer really wanted, no matter what they decided to start out with. A programming team keeps refining the product and programming for more user stories in a series of sprints. The decorator finishes each room until the customer is happy with how the house is furnished and decorated. A programming team continues refining and coding until the customer declares that the software is what they wanted. It's called the agile process, and it produces a good product. I really enjoy working with the users to find out how I can really help them. Next slide, please. So how did I get here? Unlike the others presenting today, I've only been working for VA for a little over 3 years. I've been a professional programmer for only 12 years. However, I've been a geek and in love with technology all of my life. Even when I was a medic, I would use the computer to automate anything I could. 18 years into my Air Force career, I got the chance to retrain into computer programming, and I jumped at it. I was a programmer for the last 6 years of my Air Force career until I retired. So that got me some baseline training and experience. And before I retired, I completed my bachelor's degree in computer science, because many organizations at the time still wanted that degree. After I retired from the military, I got a civil service programmer job with the DoD for a few years, working alongside military and contract programmers. It was a good job, and I learned a lot. It was also a really good halfway house for me to transition into the civilian world. Next slide, please. 4 years ago, a programmer friend I had served with told me how much he was enjoying working for Veterans Affairs. I scoured USA Jobs for a while until I found a VA programmer job opening, and I've enjoyed this job ever since. I work mostly with the Microsoft .NET languages, but I dabble a bit in others from time to time. VA has a wide range of projects from small SharePoint applications to complicated web applications, which is great. I started out working on one of those complicated web applications, a program called Income Verification Matching that helps veterans as they enroll for health care with the VA. That software took info from the veteran and from the Social Security Administration and from the IRS to calculate if the veteran would need to pay a copay fee for their medical care or prescriptions. I was updating some very interesting software to current technology and standards. I know for a fact that this software affects thousands of veterans every week. Beg your pardon. I recently moved to a project to put a modern interface on the scheduling system to help VA schedulers make appointments for veterans more efficiently. This one's called Vista Scheduling Enhancement. The project also adds some features to help VA schedulers make appointments requested by veterans through their mobile devices. But I don't work on the mobile part, so you might want to watch out for that app coming out sometime. This project is mostly contracted, but I serve as a government subject matter expert. I help the contractors code to our standards and review their code to ensure it is technically correct, within standards, and without risks. To close, I'd like to mention that I work in an area of the U.S. where there are actually more programming jobs than there are programmers. I've had recruiters offer me chances at more glamorous, better-paying corporate jobs, but I've stuck with VA. I enjoy serving veterans, and I enjoy the work I do at VA. I'm going to let you in on a big secret. Programming is not magic. The best programmers are the ones who like to solve problems and can break them down to smaller, easier-to-solve problems. But the key to everything is being able to work as a team and accept responsibility. And all of you have shown that you can do this already because you're veterans. Thank you. Matt?
Doc, that was an outstanding presentation. Great way to kick off our boot camp. For the veterans on the line, I think you got a great overview of, hearing someone who has served our country, had this, this interest to pursue this career path. We got to see at a very high level the basics of coding and what he's doing with this skill. Doc, that was an awesome first presentation. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, next up we have Stephen Bars. Stephen's going to be discussing a really cool subject here of mobile app development. Stephen, are you with us?
Thank you, Matt. First, I'd like to say thank you all for your service to our country. My name is Stephen Bars, and I am a mobile developer for the VA. What that means is that I write code that creates apps that run on mobile phones and tablets. I would like to tell you a little about the VA mobile program, and then a little about myself and how I came to be doing this work. But first, let's look at some code. Next slide, please. So in the example Doc showed us, we simply just made some text. It's the classic Hello World code example. Let's look at something a little more complex. In this code, we ask the user to type in some text, their name, and then we display it back to them. For iOS apps, this is often accomplished using an alert-style dialog, which you can see examples of at the bottom of the screen. To accomplish this, we create an alert controller object, in this example called user input, and then we set properties and actions on that object. In this case, we set a title property, a message property. We add a text field property, so the user has somewhere to input the text. And finally, we add an action, which is this button, and we say that its label is OK. This gives the user something to tap on to complete their entry. When they tap that button, the code inside the bracket is executed. We grab hold of whatever text they typed. It goes into a variable called name field. And then we call a function called display message, which we pass that text to. Here we see the display message function. Again, we create an alert controller object. This one is called display result, and it will handle displaying our result. Again, we set some properties, the title and the message. Here you can see that the message is dynamic, and we include that name, which is the text that the user typed in. Again, we set an action, a button with the title done, and we present it. And with that code, we can create these dialogues that allow a user to enter information and display it back to them. I use this type of code often building iOS apps, and it really serves us very well with the limited screen real estate in a mobile application. Okay, let's talk about mobile development in the VA. Slide, please. So the VA currently has 34 mobile apps and websites available on the VA App Store. The VA App Store provides a single point of entry for finding VA mobile apps. There are 18 iOS apps, 8 Android apps, and 8 mobile web apps. The iOS and Android apps are available on those manufacturers' app stores. So these apps are built for both veterans and providers. Some require logon, some do not. It depends on the function of the app. I work as a software engineer building these mobile apps and websites for the VA. And I feel really lucky because usually we're using really cutting-edge technologies and some great development tools. I was one of the founding members of the VA mobile development team and the lead developer for the Move Coach iOS app, which is currently available on the Apple App Store, and you can see some screenshots here in the top example. I'd like to take a moment to tell you about the Move program and my experience I had developing this app for VA. VA Move is a weight management health promotion program that is designed to improve the lives of veterans. This app allows the user to track their weight, diet, and activity and provides a ton of useful health-related resources. But what really sets it aside from other apps is that it includes a 19-week program that is designed to create a meaningful change in the user, such that these healthy habits that they're learning will stick with them. Now, this was possible because we have taken the decades of clinical experience from the MOVE program and made it available as a mobile app. And it was really just amazing to work with the dietitians and clinicians in the MOVE program office to translate their experience, expertise, and vision into this mobile app. And we've now begun hearing a lot of feedback from veterans who have benefited from this app, and it really just makes coming to work every day even more worthwhile. So currently, we are developing the Move Coach Android app, which you can see at the bottom of the screen. These are very much sneak peek prototype screens, and very much in development. We'll be releasing for field test probably early in 2018, and sometime after that, we'll hopefully be releasing it nationally. So how did I get here? Next slide, please. I ETS'd out of the Army, 13 Bravo, Cannoneer, Usha! Back in 1995. I had no idea what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I traveled around the U.S. I lived in my tent on purpose. I learned woodworking. I built some sailboat parts. In doing this, I discovered a life goal. I want to be able to work from anywhere. So I was in Portland, Oregon. I enrolled at Portland State University to learn computers. Everybody told me, with that life goal, you should go learn computers. All right, so in the introductory courses, I figured out that I really enjoyed it. I loved solving these logic puzzles that are at the heart of software development, and I decided, okay, that is the career for me. So I went on to earn a bachelor's degree in computer science from PSU, and that taught me the fundamentals of software engineering and a lot of the theory and weird math associated with computer science. That stuff's great, it's good to know, but it's not what you need to start a career as a software engineer. What I found was really important was learning how to learn a new programming language. That is the guts of this job, is knowing how to write code and make stuff happen. So that 4-year degree is not always necessary. There's community colleges, certificate programs, even self-study can teach all the basics needed to start a career as a software engineer. At one point, I returned to a local community college to learn about mobile development. That was how I was able to make a really positive change in my career path. Back in 2004, I applied for a job with the VA. I was really seeking to align my personal values with that of my employer. And the mission of the VA is so important and so close to home, it's hard not to be motivated every day. So at the VA, I got to work as a Java developer. I was writing the software that would allow one software system to talk to another software system. It was as completely faceless and seemingly as far from supporting the veteran as I could get. But really, I realized all of the software and systems in the VA are there with one ultimate purpose: to serve the veteran. Later in my career, I was able to learn all about mobile development and begin writing these mobile apps for the VA. And it feels just a little bit closer to the veterans we serve. Thank you all very much. Back to you, Matt.
Stephen, thank you so much. Stephen, that was a great presentation. For the veterans on the line, I think we, got to see here, someone who had served our country, had this unique drive and determination to get into this career field, and now he's developing code, for mobile technology. And I'm sure everyone on the line knows this. I mean, mobile phones, are huge. Over the last 10 years, have gotten so big. Mobile app development, technology. I mean, the reality is it's here to stay. So, Stephen, thank you so much for that presentation. I think that gave us some good insight into this dynamic career field. Next up, I am going to introduce Robert Ruff. He's a software developer with VA. He's going to help us gain insight around a dynamic healthcare industry, computerized patient records and systems overview. Robert, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Matt. Hello, everyone. I'm here today to talk with you about the Computerized Patient Record System, CPRS, as well as my career as a software developer here at VA. Next slide, please. Many of the graphical user interfaces for VA applications are written in Delphi. On this slide is an excerpt of a simple program that thanks veterans for their service. The program has a single button labeled Click Me. When the user clicks on that button, the code shown at the top of the slide is executed. This code calls a procedure that shows a message box to the user with the caption Veterans Day and the message Thank you for serving. It tells the procedure that the message box is informational and that it should only have an OK button. This is a simple example of one of the languages I use to develop CPRS. Next slide, please. CPRS is the graphical user interface used by doctors, nurses, and other medical providers to review and update patients' medical chart. They use it to order lab tests, medications, radiology tests and procedures, to record allergies, to request and track consults, and to enter progress notes, diagnoses, and treatments. CPRS supports their day-to-day clinical decision-making with notifications, order checks, and reminders. CPRS was first released in 1997. The data that CPRS uses is stored on the VISTA server. VISTA, or the Veterans Health Information Systems and Technology Architecture, is the core system of healthcare management within the VA. There are hundreds of applications within VISTA that manage the clinical, financial, and administrative functions of providing health care to our nation's veterans. To access that data, CPRS uses remote procedure calls to communicate with the VISTA server. Next slide, please. One of the enhancements to CPRS that is in development now is the Women's Health High-Risk Medications Enhancement. There are medications that cause birth defects or miscarriages when given to pregnant patients, and there are also medications that cause harm to breastfed babies when given to patients that are lactating. This enhancement is intended to reduce the amount of harm that could be caused to fetuses and babies. This enhancement encompasses a number of changes. It will allow medical providers to document a patient's pregnancy status, her plans on becoming pregnant, and her lactation status. This documentation will be used when checking medication orders by alerting providers of the patient's current status and encouraging them to consider appropriate alternatives when necessary. Changes in the medical record are monitored in the background, and when action may be needed, the appropriate medical providers are notified of the change. CPRS will then explain the change and help them in updating the patient's status. Work like this is what inspires me and why I work at the VA. There's no better feeling than knowing that I'm helping medical providers improve veterans' health and well-being. But how did I end up here? Next slide, please. I have 2 degrees in information technology from Rochester Institute of Technology. Please don't let that scare you away from considering software development as a career. Both of those degrees focused on system and network administration. After college, I took a job with a public school district as the computer guy. Everything to do with the computer I was responsible for, from desktop support to budgeting and equipment purchasing and everything in between. Looking back at my career and connecting the dots, I realized that I was a software developer all along. My first taste of development was when I created a payroll spreadsheet for my family's farm back in high school. I quickly moved on to automating Access databases and Excel spreadsheets using Visual Basic for applications. During my college days and in my first job, I used Linux shell scripting and Perl scripts to automate system administration tasks. I started with the VA in 2006 as a Technical Career Field, or TCF, intern. The internship was a 2-year paid job. The first year, I rotated through the different areas of IT, desktop support, network and system administration, information security, and software development. The second year of the program, I had to select one of those areas to work in full-time. During that first year, I taught myself the M programming language. M is short for MUMPS, an acronym for Massachusetts General Hospital Utility Multi-Programming System. I also discovered that I really enjoyed breaking down complex processes and automating them. So I decided that I would spend that second year as a software developer. And if you are interested in the TCF internship, you can navigate to the website shown on the slide for more information. I completed the program in 2008 and was hired by the West Palm Beach VA Medical Center as a Vista developer. I became a national developer in 2011. The great thing about national development is that not only do I help veterans across the country, from Guam to Puerto Rico, but everyone around the world. The VA is committed to open source software. That commitment means the software that I and my fellow developers here today develop could have a global impact. As a sidebar, open source software is where the copyright holder, in this case the VA, releases its source code to the public, allowing anyone to study, change, and distribute that source code to anyone for any purpose. I love my job and hope that I have inspired you today that no matter what your background is, if you apply yourself, you can be a software developer as well. Thank you for your service. Back to you, Matt.
Robert, thank you so much for that presentation. To our people who are dialed in, I think when we heard Robert's path and his story and what he's doing for the VA, that resonated with me because I saw someone who was kind of doing the behind-the-scenes work to help doctors help patients. I mean, it's such a critical function that often goes unnoticed, but I mean, just a huge skill set that he is offering to the VA. And for those of you who are dialed in, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be doing this for VA. The intent of this call is to get you inspired about coding, want to get you to learn more about it so you can do this, whether it be in the private sector or, in federal government. So, Robert, huge presentation. Thank you so much, sir. Okay, next up, I want to introduce Mr. Peter Kuzmak. Peter's a software developer with VA who's going to talk about his career and help us gain insight around imaging products. Peter, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Matt. I'm senior developer for the Vista Imaging Project. I've been with the VA since January 1990. I primarily code in MUMPS, M, and a little bit in C++. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about MUMPS, give you an example, and then a little bit about the VISTA imaging project, and then finish off with the summary of my career path. May I have the next slide, please? This slide has two boxes on it, and it's an example of a MUMPS application and how it actually looks in the code and how it actually runs. We'll talk about how it runs first. That's the green box. You begin the application by typing do lookup. That's the MUMPS command that starts the application. And what it does is it has a database of zip codes, and you enter your hometown zip code, and it will look it up and return the name of your hometown. So if you put in 2001, you get Washington, D.C. If you put in 20,000, which is not a legal zip code, it says not on file. And then if you don't enter any zip code at all, it finishes the program and prints out all done and completes. In the orange box is actually the code for this. The first line is the name of the routine or the entry point of the routine, and that's when you do the do lookup, what actually gets invoked. And then there's a loop starting with line 2 going to line 8. That is a loop that asks you, what is your hometown zip code? It then reads your zip code from the input, and then if the zip code is not entered, if it's null, it quits, as you saw before on the green screen. Then it looks up the zip code in a file called zip, and if the zip code is in the file, it will write out the actual city that the zip code's related for. Otherwise, it prints out question marks and then not on file. And when it's all done, it prints all done and quits. So that's the application. The application runs as I showed you. It's another Haskell application that actually builds the zip file. There's approximately 42,000 zip codes in that file, and it takes about a second to build that file using the other half of the application I'm not showing you. In the VISTA hospital information system, there's about 32,000 MUMPS routines. This would be one small part of one MUMPS routine. So this gives you some idea of the what the MUMPS code looks like, some idea of its performance, and something about the magnitude of VISTA. May I have the next slide, please? I work on the VISTA imaging project. Like I said, I started in 1990. And the purpose for the VISTA imaging project is to acquire images from different kinds of medical equipment using the DICOM standard. DICOM is the Digital Imaging and Communications in Medicine standard. It's a worldwide standard. And then those images are transferred from the instruments to servers within the VA and then presented to physicians for reading all across the VA. There's two different kinds of reading stations. One is a diagnostic workstation. This is our first one from 1997. And then we interface with computerized patient record system that Robert talked about in the previous talk. That's the over in the lower left, the computerized patient record system. And then it's surrounded by the imaging, where the imaging is showed to the left of that. And so when you look at the patient's chart using the graphical user interface for CPRS, you also can see the images. And we have about 6 billion images on file across the VA, and wherever the patient's been seen, the images can be seen. So if the patient lives in Maine during the summertime and is seen at Togus VA Medical Center, and then moves down to, say, Florida in the wintertime, and then visits the Bay Pines VA Medical Center, the images that were acquired at Togus can be seen at Bay Pines. Okay, next slide, please. So I began my career in programming in my freshman year in college at Clarkson in Potsdam, New York. And I worked my senior year as an image programmer. We had images on punched cards that we would go ahead and read into the computer and then do some image processing it. For graduate school, I decided to go to Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore because I wanted to use programming and engineering and applications in medicine. For 3 years, I worked at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, and I worked again in imaging, and I began working on intercomputer communications. This was in 1970, 1973. While at the Applied Physics Laboratory, I switched from graduate school in computer science to graduate school in biomedical engineering, and I returned to Johns Hopkins, received a MS in biomedical engineering, and then I worked a year at Goddard Space Flight Center as an imaging programmer. In 1997, I got a job at Johns Hopkins in a hospital and clinical information systems, and that's where I began to work in mumps. That was, 40 years ago. And then in midway in Johns Hopkins in 1984, I switched over to Unix and using C, and I specialized on remote procedure calls. This was both in the C environment and then also in the mumps environment. And then about a decade later, the VA, as Robert mentioned, that used remote procedure calls for interfacing between the CPRS graphical user interface and the mumps database. In 1990, I joined the VA to work with clinical systems and imaging, and I was architect and chief developer of the VIS imaging system. I wrote 20 years ago in 1995 the code that interfaces to DICOM, and that code's still being used today, and that's the code that's acquired 6 billion images. I've been very involved in the last 20 years in advancing the use of DICOM outside of radiology, and today it's heavily used in dentistry and eye care, partly due to my contributions. Now I'm 69 years old. I've spent almost 40 years developing clinical systems, and my most enjoyable years were at the VA. I really like helping those who help serve veterans. In hindsight, my career led to the VA. I started doing intercomputer communications in 1970, imaging in 1968, mumps starting in 1977, and remote procedure calls, and all that led to the VA. And it just impresses me that there's no coincidences in life, and so your career, follows a path that you'll find very fruitful, we hope. Okay, Matt, that's all I've got. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve.
Absolutely, Peter. Awesome presentation here. For the veterans on the line, Peter just gave us, a lot of information. One of the most things I found interesting was the imaging products of, how a doctor in Tampa, at the Tampa Bay Pines VA Medical Center, can see the same things as another doctor, anywhere across the country. And that's the code Peter's writing to help those doctors, be more timely, be more efficient with their patients. We no longer have to rely on the mail system for a doctor to send, imaging, x-rays, whatever the medical documentation is by mail. We got to wait. This is now we open up a computer screen, and thanks to work like Peter's, we can see it instantaneously. So the work these developers are doing, is just adding so much value to where we are going here in VA. Okay. Next up, I'd like to introduce Asla Gonser. Asla will be discussing 508 compliant products. For those on the call who are unfamiliar with the term 508, it's an amendment under the Rehabilitation Act to require federal agencies to make their electronic and information technology accessible to people with disabilities. Asla is blind herself, and she's going to be discussing screen readers, 508 compliance, and her career path into development. Asla, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Matt.
Sure.
So I'm a VA software developer by day and a performing singer-songwriter by night. I actually do perform in coffee houses, restaurants, festivals, and those kind of local things in the area. And the reason I'm able to do that is because I'm a virtual employee for the VA, which just means I work from home. I really don't have a commute other than from my bedroom to my office every morning. So it leaves me more time for my music. But let me tell you a little bit about my background and how it is that I've coped with my vision loss over time and how I became a software developer. So you may wonder, how it is it that a blind person became a VA software developer? I actually started out as an electrical engineer. I got a degree in Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from the University of Central Florida in Orlando. And at this point, I was still sighted. I got my first job working on the shuttle program for the Lockheed Space Operations Company. And I was an instrumentation systems engineer, which basically meant I was crawling around the space shuttle fixing sensors. My vision loss is actually what led to a lot of my career changes over time. I have a genetic disorder that causes vision loss over time. As I mentioned, it's called cone rod dystrophy. And by the time I was 26 years old, I had to stop driving. By the time I was 27, only a year later, I was declared legally blind. I had a big vision loss at that point, and it kept declining from that point forward. At that point, Lockheed really didn't want me crawling around the space shuttle anymore because it might be detrimental to the vehicle and to me. So we decided we needed to change my career path. At this point, I was using magnifying glasses to read text and books and things like that, and I had high contrast colors on my computer so I could actually read my computer screen. Lockheed wanted to keep me as an employee, though, because they knew I was a good employee. So rather than just firing me for not being able to do my job anymore, they transitioned me to something else. At that time, I was already teaching the engineers in my group how to use the new computer software that we had for the engineering systems. So Lockheed said, why don't you teach all of engineering how to do that? So I began teaching over 500 engineers that worked on the shuttle program how to use the new software programs we had for engineering. I was also providing help desk support for those applications. At that point, while I was still getting to the point where I was losing more and more vision, I had to transition from just using high contrast colors on my computer screen to actually use what's called a magnifying application. There's an application called Zoom Text that actually magnifies the screen so that you can see your computer screen. Well, I continued teaching for a little while, but I realized that teaching really wasn't enough for me. As I was teaching these guys how to use this software, I used to be an engineer using the software, so I kept thinking there's things I could do to make this better. So little by little, I started transitioning first to developing requirements for the software developers to make the software better, and then later learning how to develop and actually be part of the team that does change the software. I did have some software training as part of my electrical engineering degree, but most of it I learned on my own and through training classes that I took offered through my employer. At this point, actually, the Delta IV rocket program was starting up, and they were looking for someone to come over and help begin their engineering programs, their software applications for the engineers, and they asked me to come to work for them. So since I was going to the Delta IV rocket program, at that point I became the blind rocket scientist. The hard part at this time was that I no longer recognized faces. My vision got to the point where I could no longer just walk up to somebody and know what they look like. And here I was on the shuttle program where I knew what everybody looked like. I'd learned all their voices, but I had faces in my mind at least to go with all that. Now I was going into an environment where I didn't recognize anybody, and I was starting from a whole new set of people. But I did overcome that. It took me some time to learn everybody's voices, but I did manage to get through all that. And while I was there, I was developing software. I was developing user manuals for that software. I was also teaching the users how to use that software. And I was also the help desk for the software that we were creating. It was a small team on Delta IV, so I was pretty much in all parts of the life cycle for software. I also started having to use an application called JAWS, which is a screen reader. My vision had declined to the point where magnifying the screen was no longer enough. I needed to actually talk to me. I'll talk a little bit more about screen readers here in a minute. I did get laid off from the space program during the downturn back in 2011, downturn of the space program. So at this point, I was faced with a whole nother issue of how is a blind person going to find a new job? So far, I'd been working for the space companies, and had already proven that I was a good worker, so they kept me, and I was moving from job to job that I could do. But now I was faced with having to teach or having to explain to someone brand new that I could do the job and that a blind person could be a software developer. Well, I did actually manage to get a job. I was only out of work for 3 months, luckily. I started working for the Department of Veterans Affairs in December of 2011. I was hired under Special Hiring Authority Schedule A. And what that means is because I'm blind, I actually had some preference. I still had to be qualified for the job, but it gave me a little bit of preference over other people that were similarly qualified. The VA offers a lot of opportunities for training, which actually helped me an awful lot because I had a lot of experience with the C language for programming, but I needed to learn C# and also ultimately Java to help out here at the VA. I'm currently a Java developer working on pharmacy re-engineering projects. My job includes developing software, reviewing technical materials, and also writing technical documents, and also keeping abreast of new technologies so that when enhancements come along, I have things that I can use to make those enhancements better. My work is meaningful because it supports our veterans through providing improved pharmacy services. So let me talk a little bit about screen readers. So you may wonder, how is it that I actually use a computer because I am blind? Well, computer accessibility for the blind is made possible through these software applications called screen readers. Essentially, a screen reader is a software application that allows me to interface with my computer through an auditory interface. You use a video interface. You turn on your video screen, and it allows you to interface with your computer through a visual interface. In my case, it's completely auditory. Experienced users of screen reading software will usually increase the reading rates to up to like 300 words a minute, which most people can't understand at all. And the reason we do that is because we want to get information quickly so that we can be as efficient as we can. Users of screen readers get used to the voices and even sometimes give them a name. My coworkers have actually named my screen reader. They've called it Ralph. So let me give you a demonstration of Ralph so you can hear him. So I'm going to actually turn up Ralph's voice here.
Hello there, my name is Ralph.
And of course that just sounded like nothing to you, but let me slow it down so you can understand what he's saying.
Slower. Hello veterans, my name is Ralph. Thank you for your service to our country. Can you understand what I am reading?
So that's what Ralph sounds like, but as you notice that I've slowed it down, let me speed it up back to the speed that I normally use.
Alt tab. Top of 5. Next. Hello veterans, my name is Ralph. Thank you for your service to our country. Can you understand what I am reading?
I actually read the exact same 3 lines, just sped up to the speed that I normally listen to it. Of course, I understand it, but I'm sure you guys didn't get much of that. But let me turn Ralph back down again, because I actually am using Ralph in the background to give me some notes so that I remember what to talk to you guys about. So the most popular screen reading software applications are JAWS for Windows, Window Eyes also for Windows, and the Apple product is VoiceOver. The difference about the Apple product is that VoiceOver is actually part of the operating system. It's not a separate application that you purchase to make Apple products accessible. Smartphones can also be accessible to the blind. iPhones come with VoiceOver, so an iPhone by inherent nature is accessible to blind people. Androids have third-party software that can be installed to make them accessible to blind people. Ensuring accessibility is very important to the VA. Not all software applications or mobile apps are accessible. If a screen reader can't read an application, it's like me coming up to you while you're using the computer and turning off your video screen and then expecting you to continue using the computer application. So essentially, accessibility is very important to me as a blind user because if my screen reader can't read that software application, I can't use it. The VA is committed to providing software applications that are accessible to all veterans, even those that are blind. Our development teams work with specialized tools and subject matter experts to make sure that the software that we produce is fully accessible. The VA also, as an employer, also is very good about providing accommodations for those that are blind or with any disability, actually. The VA is who provided me this JAWS application that allows me to work and do what I need to do day to day. But as I mentioned, the VA also has the ability to provide accommodations for other disabilities as well. They're committed to providing whatever you need as an employee to make you fully successful. So hopefully I've given you a small glimpse of what it's like to be a blind software developer here at the VA. Thank you for your service to our country, and thank you so much for your time. Matt, back over to you.
Awesome, thank you. That was an outstanding presentation. You know, for our veterans who are dialed in, I think you have been able to see, with all the developers that we have had come on this call for our boot camp back to back to back in their presentations, I think hopefully you've seen a wide array of people with unique skills, abilities, talents, and you know what we want to stress to you on the call is, you know, you don't need to be a PhD to do this. You know, the VA in particular, you know, is hiring at several levels of, you know, for developing, for programming, for coding. You know, we don't want, you know, hopefully no one on the call is been intimidated in any type of way from taking on this awesome skill, because you can see what these people are doing just in the field of helping veterans. So with that being said, I want to introduce the head of VA Software Division. Her name is Catherine File. You know, she's been with VA Information Technology from the start. She's going to give us an overview of this much-needed skill in today's workforce. Catherine, are you with us?
Hey, I'm Matt. Thank you. So as Matt told you, my name is Catherine File, and I'm the Director for Software Engineering in the VA Office of Information and Technology. And though I'm not a veteran myself, I am a proud daughter, granddaughter, and great-granddaughter of Army officers. Like my colleagues who have already shared with you, I started as a programmer. I also earned a college and advanced degrees in computer science and medical information sciences, so I could use computers to help healthcare. Today I use that background as a senior manager, leading programmers and working to provide them with the tools to ensure they are successful. I hope you found these presentations to be interesting and helpful. The VA, like all government agencies, is constantly seeking skilled software programmers to join our team. Having a college degree is not essential. Experience and/or trade school education or certification works as well. We hire at all levels, from novice to expert, and strongly encourage you to consider a career with our office. Just so you know, we also seek staff in all roles related to developing software, including project management, functional analysis, software quality assurance, technical writing, and security analysis, just to name a few. As an employee with VA, we offer training to help our staff continually improve their skills and advance their careers. VA uses all the programming languages described here and more. We create software programs for all business areas of the VA. You heard several about health today, but we also develop software for benefits, for memorials, for budget, for research, and many, many, many other parts of the VA. I want to thank you for participating in this outreach opportunity, and also, like everyone else, to truly thank you for your service. Back to you, Matt.
Catherine, thank you, and thank you for allowing us to work with your team on offering these great presentations to our veterans and their families. Next, I'd like to introduce our next presenter from the VA Office of Information and Technology, Human Capital Management Division, Mr. Rod Goodwine, to discuss the federal hiring process for veterans. Rod, are you with us?
Yes. Thanks, Matt, and thanks to all vets for your service in joining today's call. Just a little bit about me. I'm a retired Air Force Chief Master Sergeant, and I worked in the communication electronics career field for close to 30 years. I earned undergraduate and graduate degrees in human resource management and a master's degree in post-secondary education, all using the VA tuition assistance programs. I joined the VA in 2014 as a senior management and programs analyst working in human resource management. I love what I do, and that's simply helping VA managers hire the best and brightest IT coding professionals to support their mission. So that's enough about me. Let's talk about the federal hiring process. Next slide. The federal hiring process is very different from the private sector's hiring process. So what do you need to know? We'll talk about veterans preference, non-competitive hiring, special hiring authorities, federal forms, and then last, what happens after you apply. Let's talk about veterans preference. The government fills vacancies in two ways, competitively and non-competitively. Through the competitive process, jobs are advertised to the general public on USA Jobs. Through the non-competitive process, positions do not have to be announced to a large pool of applicants and give special consideration to eligible veterans. Veterans Preference awards points to veterans during the application process, providing an advantage in job placement. Veterans Preference applies when veterans are applying to competitive positions, meaning those positions are publicly announced on USA Jobs. Veterans who are disabled or who served on active duty in the armed forces during a certain time period or in military campaigns are entitled to preference over non-veterans for federal positions. To be entitled to veterans preference, a veteran must meet legal eligibility requirements, and one of the most important is typically having an honorable or general discharge. Let's talk about those points. To pursue 5-point preference, you must submit your DD-214 to validate your discharge under honorable or general conditions. To pursue 10-point preference, you must submit your DD-214, your standard Form 15, which is your application for 10-point veterans preference, and you also have to submit your letter from your VA regional office stating your disability rating. I want to talk more about non-competitive hiring. Eligible veterans may be appointed to federal positions without competing with the general public, and federal agencies can hire veterans without posting a vacancy on USA Jobs. Veterans who are eligible for special hiring authorities may be non-competitively hired if they meet the eligibility and qualification requirements for the position. What are those special hiring authorities? Special hiring authorities allow federal agencies to quickly hire eligible veterans through non-competitive hiring. Now, although veterans are not necessarily entitled to appointment under any of the special hiring authorities, it is helpful for you to be aware of them. Agencies may use special hiring authorities at their own discretion. I'll talk about a few of those special authorities. The first is Veterans Recruitment Appointment, called VRA. The Veterans Recruitment Appointment Authority allows agencies to hire eligible vets non-competitively through the grade of GS-11. The second is the 30% or more Disabled Vet Authority. This authority allows any veteran with a 30% or more service-connected disability to be hired non-competitively to any position for which they meet the qualification requirements, and there are no grade level limitations for job opportunities under this authority. The third authority I'd like to discuss is called Schedule A. Schedule A authority allows agencies to non-competitively hire eligible disabled veterans and civilians with disabilities who have severe physical, psychological, or intellectual disabilities. There are no grade restrictions for job opportunities under this particular authority. You heard Asla talk a little bit about how she was selected under Schedule A. Let's talk about federal forms. Depending on the job you're applying for, you may need to submit certain forms. Be sure to read the job announcement carefully to determine which forms you will need. Of course, the very first form is going to be your DD-214. The second form will be an optional Form 306, which is called the Declaration for Federal Employment. This form will ask about your military service dates. Another form would be the Standard Form 15. This is your application for 10-point veterans preference. And then lastly, all application requests will ask for a resume that outlines your experience and education. Now, the one thing you want to be careful when you're building your resume, In the military, we like to use acronyms. We have an acronym for everything, PCS, EOD, all those types of things. But in your resume, you want to be sure to spell out all acronyms before you use that acronym in your resume. And try to keep acronyms, if you use them, to a minimum. Let's talk about what happens after you apply. If you applied for a position in USA Jobs, you can check the status of your application in the system to ensure it was received. Typically 7 to 10 days after the job's closing date, an HR professional will send the best qualified candidates to the hiring manager, who will then determine which applicants to interview. The interview and final selection process can take several weeks to complete. To check the status of an application, contact the office listed on the job announcement. All applicants are notified when a final selection is made. And typically you'll see one of two words, selected or non-selected. Now, if you are non-selected for a position, you may want to visit the Veterans Employment Center to continue working on your resume and search for new opportunities. Now, here's the million-dollar question. What's the biggest secret to securing a federal job? I'll tell you, keep applying. And I will underscore that again, keep applying. Don't give up. Several of our briefers today entered federal service through special hiring programs, so the system can work for you. And I'll tell you, after retirement, I applied for at least 5 to 10 positions a week. So looking for a federal job is a full-time job. Here are a few links to get you started. Next slide. I've included a few links that may be useful to you in your job search. Feel free to use any of these links to get more information. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your service. Back to you, Matt.
Rod, thank you so much for that presentation. A lot of information there on the federal hiring process, and it may seem like a lot to download up front, but what we did was we actually consolidated some of those questions you may had about the content Rod was presenting to in the lower right-hand portion of your screen. So if you're interested in learning more about the federal hiring process, we have created an FAQ that Rod has helped us with. If you go down to the lower right-hand portion of your screen, click on the title of the file in the box, and then click the download button, you can take that FAQ with you along with today's PowerPoint. But Rod, some great messages there about being persistent in the application process. Me being a disabled veteran myself, I remember how persistent I had to be to get my opportunity in the federal government. And some of the veterans on the line may experience the same thing, may be successful on the first try. It may take, several tries, but bottom line is be persistent with it. And, it paid off, obviously, for Rod. It paid off for guys like me, and hopefully it'll pay off for you if you're interested in taking the federal sector route. Thank you again, Rod. Okay. Next, I want to introduce Steve Keck. Steve is from the Veterans Benefits Administration, Office of Economic Opportunity. Stephen's going to be discussing information around the Veterans Employment Center and what job resources are available to veterans and their families who are seeking a job in maybe information technology. Steve, are you with us?
I am. Thanks so much, Matt. Good afternoon, everyone. I also want to thank you for taking your time today to learn more about this boot camp and to work on bettering yourselves. It's what makes us different than our civilian counterparts. That burning desire to keep moving up and keep moving out. Thank you very much. So very quickly, like Doc Dodd, I was also a combat medic. And while I had a lot of nicknames, Doc, unfortunately, wasn't one of them. I enlisted in 1987, took advantage of the GI Bill, and then went over to the dark side and went back in as a Medical Service Corps officer and retired in 2013 here at Fort Story, Virginia, as a battalion commander. I came to work for the VA last year for the Veterans Economic Communities Initiative after a few years of a very interesting transition, which there's maybe some folks out there who have had an interesting transition themselves. I went through some crazy jobs until I was able to find a career I really love, and that's helping veterans find jobs. I currently work under the Veterans Benefit Administration, as Matt said, in the Office of Economic Opportunity, or OEO. The OEO is dedicated to helping veterans and their families find meaningful careers. And just like the exact reason this boot camp is being offered and why you are here, to help support strong economic outcomes and increased career mobility. Okay, so where do you need to go? Next slide, please. The place is vets.gov. Please note, we are currently upgrading vets.gov. It's going to look different today. It's going to look different tomorrow. So the pages, like I said, may look a little different, but the content will still be there. In the bottom left-hand corner, you see Careers and Employment, which will lead you to the Veterans Employment Center, or the VEC. Now, why the VEC? The VEC is the federal government's single authoritative internet source for connecting transitioning service members, veterans, and their families to meaningful career opportunities. Basically, the bottom line is the VEC is where veterans go to find careers at companies who've committed to hiring veterans, and they're dedicated to giving back to those who have served, including family members who have also made sacrifices. So these companies have said, I am ready. They're not just veteran friendly. I mean, every company claims to be veteran friendly nowadays. The difference is that these companies you'll find on the VEC are veteran ready. They are ready and willing to accept veterans into their organizations because they truly understand the benefits of hiring the men and women who have served their country. And what will you find on the VEC? Well, down on the left-hand corner, the Careers and Employment tab, once you click there, you're going to find you'll be off and running on the VEC. And as you can see, this site is for both job seekers and employers. On the right-hand side is where all those veteran-ready employers go to sign up and commit those jobs to veterans. Now, what are you going to find on the VEC? Nearly 20,000 employers, over 2 million jobs, and over 900,000 of those jobs are committed to hiring veterans. Over 570,000 veterans have been hired so far. All right, so where do you find those jobs? Let's click on the Job Seekers link. And here you'll see a step-by-step process to help match you with that perfect career. The left-hand side of the screen starts off your career searching process. Now, even though you're here at this boot camp and you probably already know what interests you, you can still go in and use the Internet Interest Profiler and look at other potential career paths. You could use the Military Skills Translator if your MOS happens to be the same career area you want to stay in. You can create your own resume from scratch or use LinkedIn to automatically populate a resume for you. And for any of you folks out there who may not know, LinkedIn is one of the staples of the networking social media sites in the world. It is the professional and career version of Facebook. And if you have not signed up for your 1 year's worth of LinkedIn for free, you need to do that. The VA has partnered with LinkedIn, and they are providing all veterans a free 1-year premium job search subscription that's worth $360. To find out more, and to sign up, just do a Google search for LinkedIn veterans. And also, I actually just right now put a link in the chat box that will also take you there. Now, on the right side of the slide is where we start to find some jobs for a potential career. There are many ways for you to find that right career. First, you can search employers. The employers who have made that commitment to hiring veterans and or their family members. There's also a link to the VA site, which tells you more about working for the government and veterans hiring preferences and non-competitive hiring, which Rod just discussed a few minutes ago. Also, if you look at bullet number 5, you can click on the Veteran Employment Center link and search our online real-time job bank. This is our bread and butter, where all the jobs are. So let's click. And next slide. Now remember, as we are updating vets.gov, pages may look a little different, but the idea and the content's going to be the same. This page allows you to do both a basic or an advanced search. In performing a basic search just this morning without putting any location criteria and just putting web developer, there were over 100,000 jobs for web developers. As you've heard from some of the earlier speakers, there are more jobs than there are folks to fill these jobs right now in the United States. So just to try to hone in on some places, I put in Fargo, North Dakota, 66 web developer jobs. In Atlanta, over 1,500 web developer jobs. New York, over 5,000. And again, remember, these are employers that are veteran ready. They have committed to hiring veterans. Also, there's an advanced search option if you want to tighten the shot group by filtering by occupation group, an industry type, a specific employer, or federal or non-federal jobs. Like I said, the results of these searches will give you access to a multitude of jobs and employers who are veteran ready. So here are a couple additional searches I ran, and this is what the results look like. On the left, I searched for web developer in the state of Texas, over 4,600 jobs. On the right side, I just typed in help desk, and there were help desk jobs across the U.S., and look at that. Over 24,000 jobs just waiting to be filled by someone with a work ethic, motivation, and leadership skills like yourself. Okay, so you've learned more about coding and about working for the federal government and or working for the thousands of veteran-ready employers. And I hope you can see just how the demand is for these skills. I wish you all the best of luck and climb to glory. And if you have any questions, feel free to send an email to our vbavaco@va.gov email address. Thank you guys so much.
Steve, thank you. I think for the people who are on the webinar, that last slide, we got Steve's inbox there, oeoecsupport.vbavaco@va.gov. Steve, awesome presentation. You know, this tool that we just went through on vets.gov, I mean, you know, if this doesn't get you excited, you got to check your pulse here because, I mean, this tool just opens up a world of opportunities for whatever part of the country you're in, you know, what career field you're looking at going to. I mean, you're talking about thousands upon thousands of jobs in different areas for web developer. I mean, that is just a huge, huge tool. Thank you so much, Steve. Ladies and gentlemen who are on the call, you just endured through VA's first annual boot camp. Congratulations. We hope you've learned a thing or two on coding. We would now like to open up the call for questions. So we want to use the webinar chat feature. Your lines are going to remain muted, but if you can, get your questions in. We're going to take the next 30 minutes to take questions. And what we're going to do is we'll take the question in. We'll take a quick look over at it. And we'll try to reach out to the developer who's on the line right now and relay the question, and we'll talk through it on the call. So we are standing by right now for questions. And if, ladies and gentlemen, for those who are dialed in, if you're having any problems on the webinar, you can also email our inbox, which is itbootcamp@va.gov. And our experts will get back to you with a detailed response. Okay, so while those questions are coming in, we do have some questions for our developers who are on the call right now. So we're going to start asking some questions for the group, and if something comes up, just go ahead and type your question into the chat feature, and we'll get it. But this first question we have goes to Asla. Asla, are you there? Are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay. First question goes to you. What advice would you give to someone who is just starting out with no knowledge about coding or development?
Well, with somebody that's starting out with no knowledge at all, probably the best thing is maybe start out looking at some community colleges, because there's lots of good, even two-year degrees for learning how to program and code, and it's a great place to start, and it's also probably a more inexpensive route than trying to go directly to a university. But that's what I would suggest, is starting in that vein. If you're already working for an employer, you may want to talk to your employer about whether they have some vendors coming in to offer programming classes that maybe you can take them even through the employer you're currently working with.
Nice. Okay. Does anybody, are there any of the other developers who are on the call may want to add to that comment?
This is Doc. Another thing is if you choose a certain language or something, there are tons of like online courses, websites that just have free courses. Here, follow me through this, and we'll teach you how to do coding in this, or even YouTube videos.
Okay. That actually is a good transition to our next question, Doc, which is actually for you. What language do you think is the easiest for a beginner to learn? What language should I start with?
Well, I mentioned I worked for a DoD shop where we had military and contract and civilian coders there. And of course, with military personnel, you get a steady turnover of personnel. And they really wanted to get these guys up and running and, productive as quickly as possible. And in tech school, it doesn't teach you any specific language because so many are used. So that's up to wherever you are stationed. So they started out as a Java and .NET and one other language being used there. But by the time I left, they were settled on .NET because it was just easier to get them up and going and productive in a shorter amount of time while they were there before they PCS'd. So in my experience, it's the .NET languages. They all have their great place, and Java's great, but .NET's faster to learn.
Excellent. Thank you. Are there any other developers who have a preferred language that they grabbed onto early on in their careers? Okay, next question we got in is for Peter Kuzmak. Please describe a time where you saw veterans benefiting from your development work.
Sure. We had an instance 10 or 15 years ago when we first were able to take images that were on the VA system and have them be viewed on the DoD system. Okay? And we installed this at William Beaumont Hospital, Army Hospital down in El Paso, where there's a VA hospital and the William Beaumont Army Hospital very close to each other. And the situation was that the veteran was being seen at the DoD, and they did a chest X-ray, and they found a spot. And they had this new interface with the VA to be able to look up old images in the VA, and they pulled up an X-ray that was 7 years old for that veteran, and they found the spot in the same place, in the same size, and so they knew that it wasn't serious. They didn't have to go ahead and do a biopsy or anything with the patient or make the patient nervous. This was just something that was already there. But that's a good example of the kind of things that we're seeing.
Cool. Okay. Are there any other developers who have had some great experience with the work that they did and how it impacted veterans in a positive way? And if there's no immediate answer, that's fine. You know, I know a lot of the work that your team is doing, Catherine, is a lot of behind-the-scenes work, but, you know, from someone from an external point who's not a coder, you know, we definitely, in our office here in D.C., we see the value of the work you guys are doing. So, okay, next question goes to Robert. Robert, would you recommend looking at open source code to get started as a software developer?
Yes. In fact, I highly recommend looking at open source code. I'm a hands-on learner and find it extremely helpful to look at working code, kind of read it, figure out in my head, you know, what does this command do, what does that command do, and then actually see it in action and say, okay, was I right or was I wrong? And then I also like to kind of play around with it. So if I tweak like this small little section over here, what does that do? And what ends up happening with the program? As you will find out in your career, different developers have different approaches to programming and different approaches to problem solving, and the ability to read others' code is extremely invaluable. Oftentimes, when you're first hired for a position, what they will usually do is assign you to fix bugs, because that's usually the best and fastest way to learn an existing piece of software and the code for it is by reading through it and trying to find out why something is not working or why something is working a specific way, and then make changes to make it work correctly. So you know, reading others' code and bug fixing is it's a huge part of when you first actually get your first job as a software developer. So definitely looking at others' code is extremely helpful.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Okay, our next question is for Stephen Bars. Stephen, what language do you feel is becoming the most popular for mobile application development?
Thanks, Matt. So there's a huge trend that allows web developers using JavaScript, CSS, and HTML to build mobile-friendly web pages, websites that are then packaged up with a native wrapper and can be deployed as a native mobile application. So really, for a somewhat simple mobile app, JavaScript is becoming the most popular language. There's also a huge number of existing web developers that are now able to build these mobile apps in this way. We don't use that a lot at the VA because a lot of our apps are more in-depth. And it also can be very difficult to provide really complete 508 support using these packaged JavaScript apps. So we still stick with the native Objective-C for iOS and Java for Android for the most part. But I see a lot of the industry is producing the more simple, especially the informative apps, using JavaScript and web technologies.
Okay. Very helpful information. Our next question goes to Rod. Rod, you know, being a federal employee, you know, we're always used to acronyms, but can you explain to us, for those on the call, what is the GS hiring schedule?
Okay, if I understand you correctly, the GS, the pay schedule, or?
Yes, pay schedule, thank you.
Okay, all right, well, the GS pay scale, it starts out at GS grade 1, which is the first entry level for government service, and that goes all the way through to GS 15, which is the highest GS grade scale. Starting pay for GS 1 is typically $22,000 per year. The starting pay for GS 15 Step 1 is $128,000 a year. So there's a lot of opportunity there from grade 1 to 15 for eligible veteran. And like I mentioned earlier, It's about your experience and your education that would actually set your grade level.
Good to know.
Hopefully that
So
answers the question.
Yeah, you did, Rod. So what you're telling me is I don't necessarily, if I have the experience or qualifications, I don't have to start off as a GS1.
That's absolutely correct. What happens when you apply for a position, an HR representative will review your experience and education and determine if you're eligible for a particular grade level.
Got it.
You're welcome.
Okay, I got a question for Steve. Steve, are you online?
Steve Keck? Yeah.
Steve, had a question about, in relation to vets.gov, how people can, is there a process for getting on vets.gov? Do they need to set up an account? Do they need to go to e-benefits? What is the process now for veterans who are looking to go to this site, look at some of these opportunities that are out there?
There are absolutely no requirements. Anybody can look at vets.gov, and really to search just generically for jobs, you don't need anything other than a computer. You don't have to sign up through Google or through LinkedIn. When I mentioned LinkedIn, that was just as an added bonus if you wanted to create a resume using your LinkedIn profile. But other than that, it's open to anyone.
And Steve, I believe that you did mention that there is an opportunity to get a free LinkedIn profile.
There is. So if you type in Veterans LinkedIn or even LinkedIn Veterans, you Google that, it'll take you to the website, and I also put the links over in the chat box. And it's just a matter of really signing up with your name, your service, whether it was Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, whatever the case may be, and whether or not you're still active duty, retired, a veteran, and then just pushing send, and then LinkedIn will send you the link, and you'll get a $360 value for 1 year's worth of premium job search. And I will say, I've had mine for over a year, and it still hasn't gone away. And it's not, you don't have to give a credit card or anything like that. It's they just provide this service for veterans, and I know plenty of veterans who've had it for more than a year, and LinkedIn just keeps providing this service just because of the partnership we have with them.
I mean, that is such a huge benefit right there, because LinkedIn, is such a professional website. It's a great website to network, to connect with, people in your industry, people in your career field. That is awesome to hear that we have at VA have that partnership with them. Veterans, it would behoove you to not check that out, to use that search term Steve just mentioned. I believe it was veterans and LinkedIn. Was that it, Steve?
Yes, if you just because to find the site, it's not anywhere on the main LinkedIn webpage, but if you do a Google search for LinkedIn Veterans, you'll come up with the link that I put in the little chat box. It takes you to something called either partnerships or LinkedIn for good or LinkedIn for life and vet/veterans. It's a very long web address. That's why it's hard to give that out, but you can find it through Google and get there. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. Okay, we had another question come in for the coders. Anyone can take a stab at this question. What are some good search terms to use for those who are looking to get into coding?
If you want to just do a basic like Google search kind of thing and you're looking for training, obviously the word training ought to be in there, but even if you were looking for tutorial and programming language tutorial, you'll probably get a bunch of things pop up that are online already that are tutorials you can download. In some cases, they're classes you can take online. So that's a good way to get started. Maybe just search for, like I said, programming language tutorial and see what comes up.
Okay.
If you're looking for a specific language, of course, putting that in the search is helpful too.
Excellent. Thank you, Oslo.
This is Stephen Bars.
Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
So if you're actually writing some code in whatever language and you're having errors, generally there's going to be some sort of output that may or may not be meaningful. It may not even make sense to you, but you can cut and paste parts of that into Google. And developers do this every day. You get better and better at knowing how to kind of go through the garbage and get the guts of the error message. And what I found is if I put the word solved with the error message, you get much more meaningful results on how to resolve that specific error. So that was really helpful for me.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Okay, that's all the questions we have now at the moment. For those who are dialed in on the line, the veterans who are dialed in on the line, do you have any other questions that you would like to submit through the chat feature? We are on standby to take your questions. Okay, right now, since we have wrapped up a little early, we're giving you a little bit of time back. We just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for your service to our country. We hope you found this boot camp of value. If you do have remaining questions, get those into our mailbox. Okay, we will be monitoring that mailbox if you have questions around employment, federal hiring process, search functions, that you want to use for programming, search functions for job hiring, job resources. Utilize that mailbox, and we can navigate the question and get one of our subject matter experts to look at the question and get you an answer back, to help get you on the right path to what field that you're looking at going into. And also, don't forget to download the materials that are on today's call, available in the files box on the right of the presentation screen. So, with that being said, we are going to wrap up the call. For the Marines on the call, we want to wish you a happy birthday. To the veterans on the call, we want to wish you a happy pre-Veterans Day holiday. We are now going to disconnect the call. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again. Utilize our mailbox for questions in the future. And, since this is our first call, we want to keep doing this. We enjoy doing this type of outreach. We hope to do this more often. We would like to do one again next year at some point. So keep an eye on social media. Keep an eye out. We'll do our best to get these digital flyers out through our networks, our channels, so it reaches maximum. Of course, we want maximum veteran participation. My name is Matt Webb. I've been your host for today. Thank you again so much, and enjoy the extended weekend. Enjoy Veterans Day. Thank you all.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone.